the bailout bill just signed into law by President Bush. And in order to get that bill passed through the House today, congressional leaders had to change some minds on Capitol Hill. And one of those minds belongs to Republican Congressman John Shadegg from Arizona. After the first version of the bill failed on Monday, he wrote an op-ed in USA Today explaining why he voted against it. Let me quote part of it. Paulson's $700 billion plan was fundamentally flawed. The bill asked for a blank check. It did not specify which assets could be purchased or the procedure by which they would be purchased. Well, today, the congressman voted for the revised bill, and he joins us now live from Capitol Hill. Congressman, thank you. Why did you change your vote?
Well, quite frankly, I can argue I didn't change my vote. What they did is they changed the bill. You did not read from that op-ed the fact that I said it needs two fundamental reforms. Number one, we need to change the mark-to-market rule. I have been arguing for a change to the market rule from the day this crisis started. Indeed, I had pushed for that change over and over again and said if they didn't make that change, I wouldn't vote for the bill. They made that change. Second, I had been arguing for a change in the FDIC insurance amount, and the second point made in my op-ed, which you didn't read, was that they needed to increase FDIC insurance so that Americans had more confidence. I would argue they didn't change my mind. I changed their bill.
Well, I did read it, sir, and we don't have enough time or room on the screen
you didn't read it out
to
loud.
put it all in. No, I mean,
right,
but look,
saying,
did you vote no on Monday because there was not an FDIC increase? Is that one of the reasons?
I voted no on Monday in part because they refused to change the mark-to-market rule. Absolutely. That was my reason. You go ask anybody in our leadership. Indeed, a staffer for Roy Blunt came to me 40 minutes before the last vote, the vote that went down. He said, John, I know you've always wanted a change in mark-to-market. Will you change your vote if we promise you we're going to change mark-to-market?
All right.
I said, I don't deal in promises. I deal in real changes. That was Monday right before the bill went down, and I continued to vote against the bill. When the bill went down on Tuesday, the very next day, I had an hour and 10-minute long conversation with Chris Cox, and as you know, on Tuesday, the SEC began changing mark-to-market, and they issued guidance changing the bill. I just didn't want you to get the impression that I got arm twisted or I changed this because I got pressure.
Well, did you? I mean, were you hearing from constituents who said, hey, we were having trouble getting credit, and we lost a load of money on Wall Street in the markets today, our 401ks, our other investments. I mean, how much pressure were you getting to change your vote from your own constituents? The calls against the bill were very strong last week. They've been very strong this week. I don't think that the opposition to the bill has changed. What has changed is that I was not getting calls before the vote against the bill from businessmen or bankers saying that the crisis was real and telling me kind of anecdotal stories about what would happen to them. In the week between, or the days between when it went down and now, I had businessmen call me and say they couldn't get lines of credit and that they didn't think they'd be able to make payroll this coming Friday. I had a farmer call me and say that he couldn't get the chemicals that he normally uses to spray on his crops unless he paid cash in advance, up front, in full. All right. Let me quote a little bit more from what you wrote in your op-ed. Secretary Paulson is getting a lesson in civics, you wrote. The world he has entered is different than the wheeling and dealing Goldman Sachs world where he made his fortune. What specifically did he do wrong?
Oh, he did a number of things wrong. I suppose the single biggest thing is to fail to understand that when you're the Secretary of the Treasury, you don't come into Congress and order them to pass your bill. That, I think, was a huge mistake. This is a government where I have a constitutional duty to represent my constituents. He has a duty to be Secretary of Treasury. He has a job to bring ideas to us and to tell us about problems, but he doesn't get to dictate to us what we have to do. I think he used fear throughout this entire crisis to scare the American people, then scare the United States Congress. I think that was inappropriate. But I can list a lot of things he did wrong. He gave the United States Congress 4 hours notice of this crisis before he went public. I just don't think that that's the way this should have been handled. And I don't think that he should have walked into that meeting and said, we face a crisis of generational proportions, maybe greater than the Great Depression, if you don't do what I want, and then step out and say the same thing to the American people. I think public officials have a duty to consult with the Congress, to respect our duty to do our jobs, and also to listen to our views, which in the early bill he wouldn't do.
Congressman John Shadegg, thank you so much for being with us.
You bet. My pleasure.
Well,